Our topic today is one of the resources that we have available to you as it relates to resumes. It's part of our resume worded partnership that we have, and the tool itself is called Targeted Resume. And as you might guess, it's to help you create resumes that are targeted to specific types of opportunities that you're interested in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a little bit of background into why these tools can be helpful and how they fit into the general application process that you experience when you submit your resume. We'll do a quick run through of the tool so that you can see that, and then we'll talk about some things that you can do beyond Targeted Resume, because as you'll see, the tool itself has its own limitations in terms of how you can use it. So let's jump straight in. I am Dr. Joseph Barber. I'm the Director of Graduate Career Initiatives here at Penn's Career Services. So if you're applying for a role at a company where lots of people are applying, there is probably not a recruiter or a team of recruiters who are going through every single application. If there's 1,000 applications for a role, there's just not enough recruiters on a team to go through each one of those documents and evaluate it for its fit with the role that people are applying to. So this is not what happens in this day and age, right? There aren't just piles of resumes that people are reviewing. What does happen is that organizations are using software, application tracking software, to help them manage the workflow of applications. Not every organization does it. They don't always use the same software, and they tend to use it differently, right? So these are all variables as part of the process. But what it means is that as applications coming in, rather than reading everything, the software does a little bit of the footwork first to get a sense of which applications might be the strongest for a person to actually review, right? And so if we imagine the process, you create your resume, the robot, as it were, takes the first look and then creates a subset of those applications for the recruiting team to take a look at. And obviously what they are doing in most cases is not sort of high-level AI-style analysis. What they're doing is they're looking for keywords in the most basic format, right? The keywords from the jobs can be extracted, the keywords from the resumes can be extracted, and then you can match them. And if there's only a 10% match between the keywords in a resume and the keywords from the job, it's probably not going to be worth a recruiter's time to look at that resume, because it doesn't seem, just from a keyword perspective, that it's a good match. Now, it is possible that the keywords, are there, but just in different words, but that's part of this process, right? You are, as the candidate, needing to adapt your narrative to make sure that the way that you describe your experiences integrates the keywords that you know about the industry and also the particular job description that you're applying to. So at this very basic level, matching keywords is important because you don't want to be arbitrarily kicked out of contention by software that is just looking to match keywords between the job and the resume. It's a very basic level, but for some organizations, if you don't hit a high enough criteria in their keyword matching, over, 60% or whatever they set, your resume may not be seen by a recruiter. Now, again, not every role, not every organization does this, but you don't know who does and who doesn't. So you sort of want to make sure that you're managing this process effectively. Now, there are plenty of tools out there that sort of say that they'll help you with this, right? Some of them are free, but will have paid components like JobScan. Some of them are free right now, like ChatGPT, which we'll talk about in a second. The one that we have our partnership with at Penn is this resume worded platform. And what we have, if you go on the website, and I'll show you how to get there in a second, you'll see that, it's for the University of Pennsylvania, and you have free access to this tool. We sort of have a partnership with them so that you have free access, but you don't have complete free access to all aspects of this tool, right? So as with many tools, there's sort of the basic type of stuff that you get, and there's the pro level where you could pay more to get more input. And I'm going to talk about, I'll show you where those pro level things come in. But you do not need to pay money to Resume Worded or anyone to be able to get the type of insight that they're offering for a fee, right? So that I want you to use all the free stuff and make sure that you're not paying anyone any money for the things that you can get for free. By targeting your resume, you're also going to make it more meaningful to the recruiters or the people when they do eventually look at it, right? So it's not just about the robots; it's about making sure that your narrative matches what's going on. So now I'm sharing live the Career Services website. I'm going to go to learn how to write a resume, because we collect together all the resources under these different categories. And then right in the top here, next steps, you'll see targeted resume. It's an easy way to get to the platform. This takes you to our resources page. You're going to click on view resource. and then you can sign into this platform. This is sort of what you find when you log in. There's a couple of things that you can play around with, right? There's the Score My Resume, which is a general resume score for a general resume. That's going to be helpful as you are just getting a sense of whether your resume is a good fit or not. There's the targeted resume component, which is what we're going to focus on here as the primary area. And then you can also do a quick LinkedIn review just to get a sense of whether that's your LinkedIn profile sort of has dynamic keywords as well. The ones that I'm going to focus on as part of our overview today is going to be the Score My Resume just quickly, and then mostly on the targeted resume. So for the Score My Resume, what it's going to say is throw in a PDF of your resume, and we'll let you know what the general our general thoughts are on your resume. So I'm going to do this in real time for you. I'm going to throw in a resume here. Now, I'm a career advisor. I give advice on resumes all the time, so I'm expecting a really great score from the Score My Resume process here to illustrate the strength of the advice that I give to people. My score is 38 out of 100, which doesn't sound very good. And honestly, when I first saw this, I was like, hey, that's not very nice. This is my role. I should have a better resume. So what this is just going to do is it's going to give me some general thoughts and feedback on my resume in terms of how I might increase my score, right? So if I scroll down here, it's going to show me what the challenges are. So it says I have a lot of repetitious skills. And if I sort of click on this, it's going to show me in my resumes. This is my real-time resume here. It's going to show me all those words that I've used over and over and over again. And I might be able to go through that and tweak those a little bit to make them more diverse. Now, here's the problem with scoring a general resume is that, this resume was written probably for a particular role, right, when I created this resume. And so I was strategically using these words because they were articulated as being keywords for the role itself. So if you look at it from a general perspective, you might say, well, it seems very repetitious. But if you look at it from a perspective of a role where all of these skills are valuable, that might demonstrate the depth of my expertise in this area, right? So this is why I think spending too much time on a general resume is not going to be helpful. We talked about repetition, we talked about weak action verbs in terms of this, but you'll see here, this check is only for pro users. The free tool that you have access to, that we have a partnership with so that you have access to this aspect of it, that is not, it does not include the pro use, but you don't need it, trust me. And then you can break down these other things, right? So it's talking about the resume length, it's talking about the style, right? So all these things are okay, but they really do want you to subscribe to the pro features, which you don't need. Because I think a general focus on a general resume is not going to be helpful. So we're going to jump right back then to our opening area here. So we're going to go to targeted resume because it's going to be the much more useful version of this process than the general resume score. So in targeted resume, it's going to ask you for two things. It's going to ask you for a job description, and it's going to ask you for your resume that you've written targeted to that job description, right? So this is where you're much more focused now on creating a specific narrative about how your skills match and what those look like. So I found this job on Penn's campus because I was looking for something that actually aligned with my skill set as opposed to being something totally different. I'm going to cut and paste some text here, and then it's going to ask me to do my resume again. So I'm going to put in actually the same resume that I threw in before that got a 38 score on that other tool. So let's do this. And it's going to go through the whole process of then looking for those keywords. So this is exactly what's happening when you submit your resume to an organization where they use these types of application tracking systems. They have the job description on file. Now they're looking to see how well your resume matches that role. So in this case, I have a 77, right? So they're saying that I should have at least an 85 to be a really great match. Again, these are arbitrary scores, but higher is always better if you're trying to sort of take advantage of this. This relevancy score is calculated from different components, right? And so one of the things that they're doing is they're looking for missing keywords, and they're looking for the found keywords, right? And they're sort of seeing what percentage and proportion of those come to life. Now, these missing keywords are great, right? Because I can see which words are missing, how many of those times those words are mentioned in the job description, and then I can also see the context of those words in the job description. So here on the right is the job description, and if I want to know why they're talking about briefing, I can see what that means, right? And what that looks like, and so that gives me context to do that. So all of these missing words then give me the opportunity to say, well, how can I integrate those into my narrative? What can I do to make sure that I have those keywords? So missing words and found keywords, really great to sort of bear in mind as you're trying to think about that percentage. The other component of this is the soft piece, the soft skills on the left-hand side here, right? So these are words that they don't actually include as part of the relevancy score, right? So they say that these are important, but they're not a key part of that relevancy score. But they are, they are featured in the job. So diversity, whilst it's a soft sort of keyword from their perspective, is a critical element of the role that I would be applying to here if this was a job that I was interested in, right? They mention it 10 times as part of the narrative. And so if I don't talk about diversity in my resume, that's going to be a missed opportunity to demonstrate my understanding, my knowledge of, and my experience working with diverse students in different contexts. So these are, again, they're all soft skills, but you need to make sure that you find a way to integrate them into the narrative as you are focusing on your resume that's out there. The best use of targeted resume is really then to sort of demonstrate where the gaps are between your resume and the job description. The pro version of this, which I think you don't need, is going to say, well, we can help you create content to map this. And I think that's hard because this tool does not know you. It does not know your experiences. It does not know what you've done. And the phrases that it will create, these AI-generated phrases, as it were, will not represent actual true-to-life experiences that you have. And I think the sort of leaving it up to the AI to come up with better versions of your resume is sort of a risky proposition, because you really want the resume to be in your voice and focus on your experience. And so this missing keyword, I think, is enough for you to get started to say, well, where have I missed these words? The other aspect of it is, as you're thinking about the missing words, you may have missed them out because you don't understand what they actually represent, right? Whatever that word might be. These are all sort of understandable words, but they might say, for example, and I used this yesterday, cross-functional is a missing word. You don't talk about that in your resume. And it may be because you don't really understand what cross-functional means in the context of the job that you're applying to. It's not a word that you use as a student. It seems foreign to you. What that does is it gives you information about how you can then gain that you do need to gain insight into what that word is, right? So that's where you reach out to your network and you say, what does cross-functional mean? And they'll give you a sort of a description that allows you to say, well, I've done that. I didn't call it cross-functional, but I've done that in different ways. What you don't necessarily want to do is to take a word that is so foreign to your real experience and use it just because it's in the job description. So cross-functional, I think, is a great term, because as a student, probably most of what you do does not fall into the umbrella of being called cross-functional. You work across academic disciplines, you work with people at different levels of a hierarchy. That's all things that are part of that, but you wouldn't necessarily use the word cross-functional, even though it's in the job description. And one of the reasons why is because when a human reads your resume and sees you describing your work as cross-functional, they're going to have some sense of, well, I'm not sure that this is actually accurate, right? This doesn't feel like what a student does. This feels like someone who's just copying keywords from the job description. So there's a very fine line between making sure that you're capturing the keywords to sort of get past the robots, but artificially using keywords that make it sound like you're no longer describing your experience, you're just parroting what's in the job description. In most cases, when a human reads your resume, so you get past most of the keyword checking aspect, when a human reads it, they will see transferable skills, even if you don't call it cross-functional, right? If you understand what cross-functional means and you illustrate that in your bullet points, people are going to sort of say, I understand that you have that skill, even though you don't use that primarily as a keyword. This is where I would leave targeted resume alone. You have unlimited scans, right? Which is what you wouldn't get this normally. Don't set up your targeted resume account outside of the path that I showed you through the resources page, because that will be a different account. These unlimited scans can be really, really helpful. But what can you do beyond those, right? Because you would like, in some cases, some help to making the changes that it said that you need. So what I would do in those contexts is I would go back to a tool that is freely available, like ChatGPT, and then use the prompts, some of which I talked about yesterday, to get you the insight that you need. Right, so as I went through my resume and that job description, I came up with prompts that I then threw out there, and I said, what are some of the key skills in this job description that I should focus on in my resume? So I uploaded that job description, say when I used the targeted resume, and said, what do you see? This just gives you another pair of eyes in terms of demonstrating the skills that you need to focus on, right? And they're going to put a little bit of context there. So it's not now just a missing keyword like targeted resume has. It's a broader context of here are some of the skills that should be key to your application that's out there. The other prompts that I then had were, how well does my resume match this job description? And this is the great thing about the ChatGPT, is that you can do iterate, you can continue the conversation on with the same job description in its mind. So these are some of the areas that I said, how well does the following resume match this job description? And so it says, here are some of the great areas. And then it also listed some of the areas that I didn't have a good match to, right? So again, putting the information about what is a good match and what is a not so great match into context of that job, I think is very, very helpful. I then asked it to score my resume, and it actually said that it can't score resume because that's very subjective, which is interesting, obviously, because that's what targeted resume does. But it's also interesting because I asked it that yesterday, and it gave me a score of 85. So that maybe just tells you how arbitrary it is, because one day ChatGPT says it can score, the next day it says it can't, and it's all arbitrary. So the scores themselves are just to give you an insight as to how well you're making improvements as you're going through this process. Then I asked for some specific changes that I could make as part of the resume update. And I think this is helpful, again, not because it's going to give you new insight or it's going to write things for you, but it's going to allow you to reflect on some of these things. So I said, what are 5 specific changes that I can make to my bullet points that would make my resume a better fit for this role? So it says, I've taken a bullet point from your resume and here's what I changed, right? So develop project goals, workflows, and organizational structures for this newly created roles, established and executed project goals, workflows, and organizational structures for newly created role, aligning with the strategic priorities of faculty affairs and diversity initiatives. Its language here is made up, right? It's not what I actually did. It sounds fancier, it integrates more keywords, but it's not an accurate reflection of what I could actually say about myself. And that is the challenge that these sort of tools have. Same with the Targeted Resume Pro features. It's going to create fancier sounded language that is not your narrative. And I think you just can use this to brainstorm. You can create content from these tools and from these AI to give you things to think about, but you should not take these new bullet points and say, this is a better bullet point than the one I came up with. You can alter, you can iterate, you can determine whether there are changes that you can make, but you are always going to be a better sort of narrator to your skills than any AI that's out there. So I sort of want to demonstrate the pros and the cons of these tools and how you can use them, but I don't want you to get over fixated on saying that these are key to the narratives that you're creating as part of your resume writing. So it's sort of in a nutshell, again, just to sort of look at the overall process, when you are applying for roles, it's possible that applicant tracking software is a key part of keyword matching. When people say that networking is helpful, it's because when you network with someone and they reach out and they say they would be happy to share your resume with a hiring manager, probably you don't have to go through those systems in the same way. Or if you do go through those systems, it doesn't matter because the hiring manager may still want to sort of interview you because someone made a recommendation on your behalf, right? So the ways around the robots continue to be building strong relationships with people in your networks who can advocate for you. That doesn't just mean sending a resume to someone and saying, hey, can you share this with a hiring manager? It means having a meaningful conversation with that person and demonstrating that you are passionate about using the skills that they find valuable, building out on that relationship over time so that they can be in a position to advocate for you. So those are some of the ways to sort of navigate through the applicant tracking software system.